We have a couple of questions that were asked by the audience, and I would like to honor that request. One is, can public schools overcome the stigma?
I think so.
Let's see if we can hear me. Okay. So can public schools overcome the stigma of being lesser than private institutions?
If it's all right, I'm going to take that answer real quickly. One of the things that I learned as a school board trustee is that we absolutely could create public schools of choice. And I think that's part of where the stigma comes from. As a trustee, that was one of my goals going in 2007, was that we start to look at academies and schools of choice in our district. And over the course of my time on the school board, we created schools of choice for the arts, for STEM, and for STEAM learning. We created academies for leadership, and then finally we created an academy for game theory, which is really a computer technology coding academy. And they've been very, very successful. They've filled that need in a community that doesn't have charters and has a very limited availability for privates. And the enrollment of those schools went sky high immediately. So it is doable. We can do this in a public school setting, and we can do it better than privates do it.
So what we have to learn, what we have to understand is that public school, 95% of us have been educated in a public school, so they're doing a really good job. So as far as the stigma of saying the private school is better than the public school, we should just look at what we have probably in this room. How many of you have a public school education? Yep, see? So there you go. Okay, that's solved. All right, then. Okay, I'll pass it on to Mr. Gardner.
Well, I would say the stigma. I'm very concerned about this, the A through F grading thing, which I don't support. Sadly, I see sinister intent in A through F. I think it's designed to degrade our confidence, if you will, in public education, almost break us of our will, so that we can then get into the business of private schools and vouchers. And so I'm very concerned about that. I think we should completely flip it. I think we should decide as leaders that we want to have great public schools, and that's the right way to go. Choice within the context of a school system, school board, I think is fabulous. I can't think of anything better, as you've discussed. Choice as it relates to vouchers, or should I say vouchers as a means of a modality of creating choice, is a fraud. I'm going to run some numbers with you. It's a fraud. It's got nothing to do with choice. There are 300,000 seats in private schools in the entire state, and they're running at 3/4 capacity. So if you do the math, there's 100,000 open seats in all the private schools in the state, whereas there's 5.3 million students. So even if you went so far as to underwrite the entirety of the private school industry and create choice for 100,000 families, you still have 5.2 million for which you've done nothing. The whole idea that vouchers creates choice is a fraudulent assertion. And so what I'll do, and the good news is that choice vouchers have come up for a vote something like 50 times in the last 10 years. Texans always do the right thing. The legislature always does the right thing. It is our will to not have vouchers. Dan Patrick changed the name. You're aware of this, right? He knows we don't want them. The crazy guys in West Texas want them. So what does Dan Patrick do? He changes the name from vouchers to education savings accounts, with the intent to deceive his own supporters. It's a shameful thing that he did.
You actually touched on my next question, which was on the A through F rating system and the school vouchers. So let's move on to my last one. Let me see if I can find it. Well, they're kind of related. What metrics do you use to determine the effectiveness of the ISDs you represent? And it's a little bit related to is how would competition improve public schools?
I don't know what an appropriate metric system would look like, and I don't wish to be the one to decide because I've never stood in the classroom. I don't know the first thing about teaching. Which leads me to the assertion that the testing system, the metric system that we have now, looks to me as if it were designed by lawyers, lobbyists, politicians, and blockheads. I don't think they stood in the classroom. And that leads to a larger commentary about public education. You know, I come from Exxon, right? So I worked at Exxon for a long time, and they were a client of mine. You go to Exxon, go to the executive suite, say what you will about Exxon, but you go to the executive suite, you know one thing about everybody on that executive suite, they all know how to drill oil wells. So when you look at the leadership of our public education system in Texas and go to the very top, the policymakers, those deep thinkers, strategic thinkers, have they ever stood in a classroom?
Never.
Never. I don't think they have the slightest idea what they're doing. So whatever the right metric system is, it will be designed by people who know what they're doing.
Yes.
And that's hugely important.
Well, and I agree with Mike that there is a world of very evidence-based education out there. There's lots of research that's been done on the right methods, and I think that there is some sort of portfolio assessment. And I've always thought there was a portfolio assessment for students' achievement that we need to be looking at that would address more forms of their learning styles than just a bubble test. I'm appalled at the stress level of our children now in the testing environment, and I want to say that. I've watched that over a very long period of time, but certainly for 10 years as a trustee. I've seen schools locked down and kids not allowed to go to the restroom and leave the classroom without special kinds of permission. And I've seen children throwing up on test day simply because they are so stressed out. Now, I'm going to guess, because a lot of you are close to my own age, that when you were in school, that one morning you walked in the classroom and the teacher slapped a test down on the desk and she said, "Today's test day, we're going to do the California Achievement Test today." And it took a couple of hours to do one test and we were done. And I don't remember whether it was for the semester or for the year, but there was no test anxiety because you didn't have that teaching to the test every day that led up to that one day of testing. I think that's the sad shame of what we do, because, and Mike touched on this earlier during his speech, that what we really should be focused on in the classroom are higher level thinking skills. Critical thinking, analytical reasoning, and problem-solving skills. And when we are allowed to use the precious minutes that we have in the classroom to address those types of thinking skills, it won't matter what's on the dadgum test, because the children will be prepared to analyze and reason through the questions and do well on the test. All in all, the educators that I know would love to move in that direction. And they would love to spend their time focused on those thinking skills as opposed to, a set of numbers on a Scantron.
So nobody argues that, yes, there needs to be some sort of assessment at the end of the year, basically to determine progress and how well a student is doing. What we do differ on is exactly what you're saying, is how are we assessing that? One of the things that I find upsetting is that we're not only spending time teaching to the test, but you have benchmarks along the way. Well, we have to test on this 6 weeks, and this 6 weeks, and this 6 weeks. Our children are spending not just that day on the high testing, they're spending various points throughout the year on benchmarks. So again, that's just furthering the issue of becoming more and more nervous about the test. And as far as high-stakes testing, of course, I'm going to concur with Lieutenant. Look at me, I'm already calling you Lieutenant Governor. I'm going to concur. Basically, we do need to eliminate high-stakes testing. That test should not depend on the performance of the child, of the school, and the appraisal of that teacher, that is creating just a hostile work environment for everybody.
One thing too, you mentioned hostile work environment. You perceive, of course I'm not in the scrum, I'm here trying to get elected, so I'm not in a school district. Others might have a different point of view, but just from reading the newspaper and talking to people, you perceive that there's a very antagonistic relationship between the state and schools and school boards. And, let's face it, it might be, some schools are better than others, right? We have some really good schools. I mean, our good schools are great. But we also have a lot of schools and school districts that need help. And the way you help them isn't to criticize them, just throw rocks at them, cut their funding and then throw rocks at them. The way you help them is to quietly, behind the scenes, not stirring up anxiety in the community, but quietly working behind the scenes to see, are there techniques and trends and ways of management techniques available to you to help you get from point A to point B. This is something that we do in business all the time, where the senior executives, and their job is to make sure every division is successful. The senior executive of a big company doesn't throw rocks at the divisions, wait till they fail, and then laugh at them. You go in there and quietly help. And so there's a whole lot more, I think, that the state can do to help the schools that need help. But face it, in Houston, we've got some real difficulties with our Houston Independent School District. And a big part of it is funding. I mean, schools aren't successful because they don't have any money coming at them from the state. We're probably out of time that we can't talk about Robin Hood. I can probably get through it in less than 45 minutes if you'd like.
We have room until 11 o'clock. No, but I promise y'all 4 to 7. We're good. And that is all I have. You all touch on all the questions I was going to ask. Thank you very much for spending your time and coming out here in the rain and late at night. Please, 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 I do ask that whatever it is that you came up with, whatever it is that you decided, keep talking to your candidates and keep talking to your neighbors and your family and your friends and spread the word and get them out to vote, please. Thank you.